Welcome. It is, let's see, day 4 of our live sessions with these incredible authors. But today's really extra special because we have a birthday in the house. Woo! So a happy birthday to Jerry Pallotta today.
Happy birthday.
Hey, happy birthday, Jerry.
60.
Amazing.
67.
67. And the fact that we get to do this live and people can celebrate with you, it's really exciting. So all week long, Jamie and I have been behind the scenes while the three of you have been sharing some incredible, the conversations have been wonderful, but we're all practicing social distancing. And I thought let's just let everybody know where are we joining in from. So I'm Mary Alice Curran. I happen to be in Connecticut. Yeah, so go ahead, everybody, down the line.
I'm Roland Smith. I'm in Oregon, Pacific Northwest.
I'm Jack Gantos. I live right downtown in Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm
Jerry, where
Pallotta.
are you?
I'm Jerry Pallotta. I'm in Southie, which is known as South Boston. Southie is my hometown.
I'm Jamie Donnelly. I am in Texas, East Texas, close to the Louisiana border.
And for anybody that's joining us live, it would be great. Let us know in the chat box, where you're joining in from. Some of the names we've recognized this week. So we've known that Canada has been in attendance, Scotland, but it would be great to have you jump on that chat box and let us know, because today the three authors are going to be talking about the story behind the story. And Jamie and I, we'll just be in the background. So we'll let you take it away. Have you decided who's starting first?
I think Jack is, right, Jack?
No, I'm starting first.
Wonderful.
I'm lead off today.
Terrific. Take it away.
Okay, so first off, welcome everyone. Day 4. We're still all enthusiastic and eager to serve. Today, the theme is the story behind the story. So I gave it some thought, and I'll get to that. So first, just a quick review with Rotten Ralph. It's the story behind that was I had a rotten cat, and then, of course, I wrote that book. And then the Jack Henry books. I had a diary as a kid, and then I kept a lot of notes about growing up, my neighbors, especially my family, my school, my teachers, my friends, my pets, all the odds and ends of things that happened to me. And I ended up writing about 5 books of short stories. Amazing. And then Dead End in Norvell. Well, I grew up in Norvell, so that's a match. But I thought today I'd start with Joey Pigson. Now, I can't see my screen, so if anybody can see that, I hope that's working okay. So, at any rate, Joey Pigson swallowed the key. So where did I get the character? When I write books, the first thing I'm always thinking about is the character. How can I really get a grip on that character? That's what I'm looking for. So, Joey Pigson. I was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was at a school, I was at the Buchanan School. Buchanan was one of our not greatly celebrated presidents. But at any rate, I was at the Buchanan School, and I was in a 5th grade class. And it was kind of an interesting class because all the desks had been pushed from the back to the back. And there was one desk that was right in front of me. So I was standing in front of the blackboard. There was a kid with a desk about 3 feet in front of me, and everybody was about 12 feet behind that kid. So I thought, this is an interesting arrangement. So I started to speak. And as I was speaking, the kid had, I don't know how he did this, but he kind of rose up on his knees. It was one of those unibody desks. He rose up on his knees and he got his foot stuck in the back of it. which he had practiced, and he could spin a 360 around. So as he's spinning a 360 and I'm speaking, I would start off my sentence. And this kid was so prescient, so sharp, so smart that he would then whip quick, finish my sentence accurately. And I was like, whoa, this kid is great. And the more we went on, the kids in the back just receded. And it was like him and me, him and me. And this went on for about 15 minutes. And then suddenly I could start to see that he began to change. He began to be worried about something. And he kept spinning around, and then he'd wave his arm wildly toward the teacher's desk, but the teacher was talking to some other kid. And he would spin around and wave and wave and wave. And finally, he couldn't take it anymore. And he yelled out on one of his passes, he yelled out, "Teacher, teacher, I forgot to take my meds." And she just pointed to the door, and that kid shot on a line out of that desk right through the door. And I heard him run up the hallway, just like bang, 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 punching all the lockers as he ran up the hallway. And I was just staggered at that moment. I just stopped. The kids were stopped. The teacher was stopped. My kid was gone. And I just stopped, and I thought, that's a great kid. But I had all these other kids. So then after the pause, then I engaged them and brought them forward, and we finished the presentation. But that kid did not leave my mind. And that night, I had to go to another town. So a car picked me up, and it dropped me off. It dropped me off at this truck stop motel somewhere in a town called the Willows, which I called the Willies, because there were just 4 rooms attached to a truck stop. And I went in, and it was the strangest hotel room. Looked like a regular hotel room, except somebody had taken a big sheet of paper and ripped it up into little tiny pieces. And on each piece, with a piece of Scotch tape, they had written a little sign. So on the lampshade, there was a sign that said, "Do not steal the lampshade." And on the pillow, there was, "Do not steal the pillow." And on the middle of the television was, "Do not steal the television." And on every object in the room, there was a little sign. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in like a madhouse. And
I think Roland did that.
I think so. So I was like in this mad place. So I finally thought, okay, the only way that you're going to compose yourself is just get your journal out and write anything. So I pulled out my journal and I thought, well, okay, what am I going to write? And I thought, well, write about your day. And so at that moment, I remembered that kid, and I started writing that first Joey Pigs book. And then I wrote this down, this little section. I like this little section. So I'll just read this just little opening of Joey. And this is chapter 1 of Joey Pigs Has Swallowed the Key. And it goes like this. At school, they say I'm wired bad or wired mad or wired sad or wired glad, depending on my mood and what teacher has ended up with me. But there's no doubt about it. I'm wired. This year was no different. When I started out, all the days there looked about the same. In the morning, I'd be okay and follow along in class. But after lunch, when my meds had worn down, it was nothing but trouble for me. One day, and then it just takes off from there. And so that kid just keeps going. In this book, just as a matter of, some writing fun. So I take Joey, who's this wired kid, who's full of energy, who's whip smart, and I build and cantilever sentence upon sentence. And I make these 3-4 page long sentences that are these wiry, whippy sentences that spiral around in the book. And the sentences themselves create this kind of inner rib cage for that kid. and that spring that is wound so tight that when that button is pressed, that kid just shoots down the hallway. And so I'm trying to rig the language with the kid and get those two things in sync with each other so that the writing and the character work together. And then the story, of course, unfolds from there. So then I wrote the rest of the book, and then I probably then rewrote it as we all usually do about, I'd say probably on average about 50 times. I think, 50 times is fair to say. And then, and that's the way it is. And that book went out, and, I still get tons of letters from kids every month. I get a big envelope from the publisher with just huge amounts of mail. And I'd say that this Joey Pigza book gets the most mail of all the books I've done. That's the kid that kids write me and say, the first line, how do you know I feel like that? How do you know? That's what they say. So I know that book works for those kids, and they see themselves in it. And from that, they know they were a great kid. So that's the story behind the inspiration for Joey Pigza, Swallow the Key, and the entire series. I'm handing it over to you guys.
Okay.
Thank
Well, I love that book, by the way. It reminds me of me. Although
I read that.
meds. That's a great book. It's a great book. So
Can I
today,
ask one question?
go ahead. What's
Where'd
that,
you
Jerry?
get the name Pigza?
Oh,
Where'd you get the name Pigza?
so I was outside of where I'm from in Mount Pleasant, up that way. And I was working in the school district, and the superintendent's name was Thomas Pigza. And I always remembered that name. That's such a good name. The Z in there. I mean, a name with a Z in it like that. 2 syllables, really fast, zippy with a Z, that fit that kid. So I put that in there, and then you wouldn't believe the phone calls I got when that book came out. I would get phone calls going, did you write that book about me? I'd be from Cleveland. Did you write that book about me? From Arizona. There are so many Joey Pigzas out there in the world.
It's funny. Very
Yeah.
funny.
It is. I thought they were going to come and get me, but they didn't. So who's up next? Roland, are you up
Jerry,
next?
you want me to go?
Go, Roland.
I should go? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is a hard day for me because I've written like 27 novels, and I was looking at the novels, and the novels are kind of like my children. And it's kind of hard to pick one book to sit there and say, what's the story behind this story? Because all of them have a story behind them. And like Jack, I usually start with character, but in the book I'm going to talk about today anyway, it certainly has character in it, but it actually happened from 3 different events. Some of you probably remember Mount St. Helens. And I was working at the Portland Zoo when Mount St. Helens erupted. And that was a big day. So I'm in there taking care of the cats, and I hear this huge explosion outside. And I ran up to the roof of the building, and I looked to the north, and I said, whoa, 1,500 feet of that mountain blew off the top instantly, 1,500 feet. That means that when I was going to work that day, that mountain was 1,500 feet taller than it was when I was looking at that mountain in my rear view mirror. Of course, you couldn't see it very well because of the ash. I thought, man, I should write about a volcano, because it's unbelievable. A volcano that close is really unbelievable. We live the zoo's about 50 miles from Mount St. Helens, but man, it was a big deal. And it caused a disaster, similar to the one we're in now. It kind of shut everything down because ash was everywhere. It was a big mess. The other thing this book is about, and I'll show you the book at the end, it's about Bigfoot. And I know that everybody out there believes in Bigfoot. I believe in Bigfoot, and I'm a former research biologist, and I've looked at all the evidence. I've never seen Bigfoot, but it wouldn't surprise me if someday someone would see Bigfoot. And I've been fascinated with Bigfoot since I was a little kid. When I was in fourth grade, growing up here in Oregon, everybody in Oregon was seeing Bigfoot. They were seeing Bigfoot all over the state. And as a fourth grader, I thought I could catch Bigfoot. And I lived in Portland in a neighborhood, and I went into my backyard and I dug a pit, a really, really deep pit. It took me 7 days to get that pit deep enough for Bigfoot because Bigfoot is big. And when I had that hole deep enough, I covered the top of it with newspaper. And I put dirt on the newspaper so Bigfoot couldn't see it. And I waited. 3 days after I dug my pit, I was sitting in my kitchen, getting ready for school, looking out in the backyard, eating a bowl of cereal. And out in the backyard was my mother. And my mother was a little woman, about that tall, with red hair and fiery blue eyes. And she was getting closer and closer to my pit. And I'm watching her eating my cereal. And I said to myself, you should say something. Well, I couldn't make myself say anything. And she got closer and closer to that pit. And I'm eating my cereal. And I said to myself, you should tap on the window. Well, I couldn't make myself tap on the window. And she got closer and closer, and whoom, she fell into my pit. I mean, and she didn't just fall in that pit. It looked like Satan reached up and grabbed her by the ankles and yanked her into that pit. Her red hair flew up in the air and she disappeared. And I looked out the window and I said, oh, it worked. And when we got my mom out of that pit, which was really hard because she was really mad. I mean, it was like pulling a bobcat out of a big hole. She grounded me forever. And the third thing this book is about a guy named D.B. Cooper. Some of you may recall D.B. Cooper. Well, I know a lot about D.B. Cooper. And here's what D.B. Cooper did, just to kind of remind you. D.B. Cooper is the first person ever successfully hijack an airplane in the United States and get away with it. What he did is he went to the Portland International Airport and he got onto an airplane Thanksgiving Day, actually Thanksgiving afternoon, and they took off towards Seattle, very short flight. And about halfway up to Seattle, he told the flight attendant that he had a bomb. Well, he didn't have a bomb, but nobody had ever done this before, so everybody believed him. So they landed in Seattle, and when they get to Seattle, the SeaTac airport, of course, the police are there, the FBI is there, you know, they put him in a special part of the airport, and the FBI says, hey, Mr. Cooper, that wasn't his name, by the way, but they said, hey, Mr. Cooper, how about letting the passengers go? And D.B. Cooper said, sure. But before I do that, I want you to give me $200,000 in cash and 4 working parachutes. And the FBI said, okay, we don't do hijackers this way anymore. So they gave him $200,000 in cash and 4 working parachutes, and he let the passengers go. But staying on the airplane with him was a pilot, a co-pilot, and one flight attendant. And they looked at Cooper and they said, where do you want to go? He goes, I want you to fly me to Mexico. And they said, okay, we'll fly you to Mexico, but you need to know this. We have to stop on the way to Mexico and refuel. And D.B. Cooper said, I know. I want you to fly me to Nevada. And when you get to Nevada, I want you to refuel and fly me to Mexico. And halfway down, so they took off from the SeaTac airport. And by this time, there's this huge thunderstorm going on. It was a very stormy Thanksgiving night. And as they were flying south towards Nevada, D.B. Cooper bailed out of the airplane with $200,000 in ransom money strapped to his body. And to this day, nobody really knows what happened to D.B. Cooper. And the reason I know a lot about D.B. Cooper is that when I was in 4th grade, 5th grade, my dad was actually in charge of the Portland International Airport. He was the director of aviation. So D.B. Cooper actually swiped that airplane on my dad's watch. And my dad, who is a former bird colonel, was not happy about this happening to him or his airport. And so all 3 of those things, Mount St. Helens, Bigfoot, a lot of spotting, a lot of sighting of Bigfoot around Mount St. Helens, and D.B. Cooper happened in the same area at different times. And I combined those 3 events into a book called Sasquatch. And this book came out like, I don't know, over 20 years ago, and it's still pretty popular today. So if you're looking for a good adventure while you're sitting around home, not doing, you can't go out, this is a pretty good book. Takes place in the Pacific Northwest. So I picked this book just because, it's one of the older books, but it's a pretty fun read, and it really happened based on 3 different true events. How about you, Jerry?
Well, first off, Roland, let me just say that was spectacular. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
How about me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I got about 10 books here I was going to tell a story of.
You can
we'll
do
see
it.
how I do. All right.
Yeah.
I did want to show this, though. I'm sorry I couldn't get it on my screen, but I have it on my laptop. There is a dead whale that washed up in Cohasset, Massachusetts. And what did I do? I touched it. I wanted to be able to tell kids that I touched, oops, sorry about that light. I wanted to tell kids I touched a dead whale. So there I am, I touched a dead whale. Then in our neighborhood, there was a great white shark. It scared all the people. People wouldn't go to the beach. And what happened? I touched it because somebody caught it. And some fishermen caught it by accident. And I went down there and I touched it. About 2,000 people went down there and had their picture taken with it and touched it. So there you go. I saw a great white shark. I touched a whale. I touched a great white shark. And what happened? I was inspired to write who would win, killer whale versus great white shark. So there's one story for you. And in the summer, I have lobster traps, and I pull lobster traps. That's my hobby. I've taken principals, I've taken librarians, I've taken fellow authors, I've taken neighbors, cousins, whatever. So I wrote a book called Going Lobstering because I go lobstering in the summertime. But after I wrote this book, I put my dad in this book as the character, the main character, and you'll see the story behind the story. There's my dad right there. And of course, I am now about his age. He was there 35 years ago. And I'm fat and bald, and people think I put myself in the book. But there's my dad. But after the book came out, my dad said, that book's flat. There's nothing to that story. And I thought, wow, that wasn't very nice. I put him in the book. I tell nice stories about him. And people would meet him on the street, and he'd be in a suit and tie, and they'd be really sad that he wasn't a real lobsterman. He was just a...
Jerry, I think you muted yourself.
You told me my...
You're back. Nope, you muted yourself again. Now you froze the video. Now you're gone.
How's that? Am I on now?
Yeah, not your video. So you got to hit that video button.
How's that?
I think you're coming. There you are. You're good. You're back.
Do I have voice?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, guys. So my dad said, hey, that story's not that good. So you know what? I thought about it one day. I've seen mackerels chasing sand eels. I've seen tunas chasing bluefish. I've seen bluefish chasing mackerels. I've seen plankton. And what happened one day, I thought of this book, Dory's Story. So I got the idea from, piecing it together, the whole food chain. So there's a book on the food chain called Dory's Story. Then another book idea, another story behind the story is I read a book called It's a Wonderful Life by Stephen Jay Gould, the famous Harvard geologist. And it dawned on me, kids know that dinosaurs are extinct, but they don't know that other animals are extinct or other creatures or plants. So what do they say? Like 99.9% of everything that ever lived on Earth is extinct. So I decided one day there's hundreds of dinosaur books. I wanted to write a book of creatures that weren't dinosaurs. So there it is, the Extinct Alphabet book. The story behind the story is I wanted to write a book with no dinosaurs in it. So there's the Extinct Alphabet book. I'll show you one of the creatures I really love. Here's a creature called hallucigenia. There's the hallucigenia, and it's so strange They found it in the Burgess Shale up in Canada, in the Rockies, in fossils. When they found this creature, it was so strange, they thought they were hallucinating. They called it the hallucigenia. Hey, one more story behind the story I would tell is a friend of mine wrote a book called the M&M Candy Counting Book. And the M&M Candy Counting Book sold like 2 million copies. The book was unbelievable. It was so popular that it was written up as in Publishers Weekly as a new style of book. So the story behind the story is I helped her get it published. So Barbara McGrath wrote the M&M Candy Counting Book. It counted to 12, then it ate its way back to 0. It was a really cool book. It was colors, it was numbers. And what happened? She was, M&M's is owned by Mars, and Mars owns like the Snickers bar, Skittles, M&M's, peanut M&M's. And she and I talked about doing other brands. So I wrote a branded book called the Hershey Fraction book. And that book sold about 1 million copies. And after it sold 1 million copies, the story behind the story is, why can't you buy this book anymore? And the story is because some lawyers attacked Hershey and Scholastic and said that the book was causing obesity in America. So the books were all pulled off the shelf because of obesity lawsuits. Some mom got her fat kid and said, my kid's fat because of Jerry's book, which is ridiculous. So there you go, Hershey Fraction book. And I don't know if you remember this, teachers, there is the Reese's Pieces. I did these branded books. It was like a new style of book. Here's one, Kisses edition. So I did all these books. None of them are in print anymore, and they're not in print because of lawsuits. So that's the story behind that story, okay? And then maybe a couple more. Here is a book I wrote called A Giraffe Did One. And I have read this book, and you can, teachers, you can find it on YouTube. I read it on YouTube and on my website, jerrypallotta.com. Giraffe Did One. And I won't tell you what the book is about, but I'll read one page. It says, maybe I'll read 2 pages. It says, an ant did one, but no one could hear it. And then it says, a worm did one. Where'd the worm go? Here, it's over here. A worm did one, but it was underground. You know, a mouse did one. It was barely a sound. So how did that book come about? I used to travel the country a lot, and I would send postcards to Ralph Maciello, one of my illustrators. And I draw a little worm, and I go, Ralph, a worm did one. Will you illustrate this for me? Then maybe a month later, I drew a little ant on a postcard, and I wrote, hey, Ralph, an ant did one. No one could hear it. Will you draw this for me? And he used to say, no, I don't have time to do that. No, I don't have time to do that. So that's the story of that book. And but it didn't come out for 25 years. It kept getting rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected by people, by publishers. Finally, Sleeping Bear Press decided they would do it. Here's another story. I wrote a book called The Yummy Alphabet Book. Only when I first wrote it, it was called The Spice Alphabet Book. So it's had 2 different titles, but it's a book full of, it goes like this: anise, basil, cinnamon, dill, eucalyptus, fennel, garlic. I had a mother that was a great cook, and I have a family that eats a lot. Okay, I'm the thinnest one in my family, and I'm pretty heavy. So as my cousin Michael used to say, the Pallottas, they put everything on everything. So that's how we are. We put everything on everything. So I thought all those great flavors, cola, chocolate, cinnamon, garlic, all those great flavors, where do they come from? So I wrote a book. That's the story behind the story, how I thought of writing a book of spices and flavors. Maybe I'll show one more. I wrote a book. I thought of this book one day in a hotel, How Do Seeds Get Dispersed? Then just by chance, I got a phone call from a publisher that said, hey, we need a book for Earth Day. So I was in my hotel and I was thinking of this book of how seeds get dispersed. You know, like a bear eats an apple and then, you know, some of the seeds fall and it will grow into an apple tree. or, you know, a beaver would cut down a tree and all the seeds would crash and grow on the banks of the river, you know, like all the different ways that seeds get dispersed. And so I wrote a book called Who Will Plant a Tree? But that's not the title when I started. I was asked by a publisher to write an Earth Day book. So I wrote Who Will Plant a Tree on Earth Day? So when I turned the manuscript into the editor said, we don't like that book. It's not funny. And I said, not funny. Earth Day is not supposed to be funny, is it? Isn't it supposed to be like serious, like we're all taking care of the earth? They go, your book's not funny. We don't want it. So I never got the book published. And then I was kind of sad about it. So I sent it around to other publishers. And one publisher said, we love this book, but we're going to get rid of Earth Day. We're just going to call it Who Will Plant a Tree? So there you go. It's all different ways that animals disperse seeds. But that's the story behind the story. It all started with Earth Day. All right, kids, there's a few stories for you of ideas that came from my books. And there you go.
Jerry, we're gonna do some questions, but before we do that, there's Marie, it's Jack and Jerry, Mary Alice, Jamie. We're gonna sing you happy birthday. Are you ready, Jerry?
I'm ready, man.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dearest Jerry. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, blow it out, Jerry. Here we go. She's gonna show it up there. Ready? Yeah, nice job. Nice job.
Happy birthday, sweetie.
You know what's great about this?
I know there's no flights, but I'm going to fly out there right now and have a piece of that cake.
Hey,
It'll be
Alaska
gone.
has some really cheap flights. You know you're always welcome.
You probably fly out here for $15. You'll be alone.
All right.
On the
Hey,
airplane.
Marie, thank you. Roland, thank you very much. Jack, thanks
You're
for
welcome,
staying.
sweetie.
Sure.
Beautiful
Have
cake.
fun.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we have some questions. So I'll just read these because you guys are probably not there. You got a lot of birthday messages, but I'm not going to do that for you. But there's a lot of birthday messages. Craig Schroeder has a really interesting question. It says, gentlemen, that's an exaggeration, but he says, gentlemen, you must have problems sleeping at night with such creative minds. Have you written a book based on a dream you've had? And we kind of covered this earlier in the week, but we could certainly do it again. But for me,
Yes,
I've never had a
dream-
dream that I've
I
written
dreamed
about, but
the
you
book.
guys go ahead.
I dreamed the book, Dory's Story. I dreamed the book.
Yeah.
And in my head, the book was done. I was paging the book in my head. I dreamed that book. That is true.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that does happen. How about you, Jack?
No.
Yeah.
I really, even though I used to, this gives me some thought, but I used to keep a dream notebook, just a notebook for it. And when I would keep the notebook, I found that I would remember my dreams more completely, more thoroughly. But once I stopped keeping that notebook, they began to fade. Although last night I had a wonderful dream about the future. And in the future, you could drive your car from the back seat by just thinking about it. That's all I remember of that dream last night. And I thought, that was pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll work its way into a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. The back seat certainly makes it into the book.
Let me see where we had another question.
I have a question for you, Roland, because you didn't answer it on your own. But I am curious, you hear a lot of adults that say they don't dream. They don't remember what they dream about, and they can't remember. They don't ever remember having anything in their dreams. Do all three of you actually remember your dreams? Like when you're waking up, can you remember? Do you have vivid dreams? Is there details? I'm just curious.
I have a lot of dreams. None of them are good for fiction. And it's funny, I kind of make fun of books that have dream sequences in them. I'm not real fond of dream sequences in novels because they kind of just go on and everybody thinks they're kind of interesting. And to me, unless they're germane to the story, really germane, I kind of like, oh boy, here comes a dream sequence. I mean, to be honest with you. And when people come up and say, hey, I want to tell you about my dream, I'm like, yeah, I'm busy. I really don't want to hear about people's dreams too much. I mean, it's not that interesting to me. I mean, I'll be honest. I think that's kind of cruel of me, but it just doesn't do much for me. Even though I do have dreams. I mean, lots of them. I mean, I'm a good dreamer, but none of them have. Well, I have to admit this. The first novel I wrote, Thunder Cave, I have a dream sequence in it because I was young and it was my first novel, and I put it in there. And it's still a great book, but I regret that there's a dream sequence in it because I thought, oh, that's really cool. But that was written a long time ago.
Yeah. When you
You
were
want to answer that, Jack?
dream sequences, I have a tendency to keep them out of the book. You know, like that sort of whole Dali-esque dream sequence, you know, the surrealism within the dream sequence and masquerading as a deeper truth where the character is trying to sort of sort that out and decompose the dream and find out the real kernel of the unconscious truth of things. You know, that's good to talk about maybe, but in a book, as soon as I get to that part, I'm just like skidding right out of control.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a cat on my lap, so my conversation is somewhat complicated.
It looks really comfortable. It looks really comfortable.
Oh yeah, I should, you know.
Really. Hey, here's a question.
Hey, Jamie, to answer you, yes, I remember my dreams a lot. I've told my kids some of my dreams, you know, like we're having dinner, Thanksgiving, whatever, birthday parties, whatever. I told my kids a bunch of dreams I had, and they think I'm really strange, really strange.
There you go.
Yes, I remember my dreams.
Yeah.
This is from Susan Hutchins, who we know well. Hi, Susan. It says, if the authors use an idea from real life, if they really know the person involved, do they feel the need / obligation to let that person know that they're going to be in a book the author is writing? And my answer is no, I feel no obligation whatsoever. And in fact, I sometimes use names of friends of mine, authors and other friends. And I do it kind of as a test because, you know, when you write a book, you get like 25 free copies. And you give those out to everybody, you know, you give it out to family members and other authors and so forth. And it's really interesting because you rarely hear anything from those people that you gave a free book to. It's always, for me anyway, that's the way it is. And so I kind of give them the book, might put their real name in there as a minor character. And then if they don't tell me that they were in the book or ask me why they put, then I know they didn't read the book. And so it's kind of a test I do. And so I think people have to read the book to find out if they happen to be in it. You know what I mean? So I kind of do use real names, but I don't really use real people in my book. And if I did,
You use my name in a book.
I did. You owned a restaurant. Yeah. And I made
Yeah.
Terry Truman a homeless person because I thought that was
Right.
funny.
You made Terry Truman, a friend of ours, another
And
author.
Pam Munoz Ryan, my sister, I made her an FBI agent because she always wanted to be in the FBI. So I made her an FBI agent.
Yeah.
And so, I
Didn't
mean,
you
I
say
do use
Terry
real names.
Truman lived in a dumpster or something like that?
What's that?
Didn't you say that Terry Truman, our friend and great author, lived in a dumpster?
Yeah,
Can you put-
absolutely. Absolutely. And he was flattered.
Yeah.
So what do you
Also,
think?
see, you don't think I read your books. Our friend Broad Baggart, poet from New Orleans, didn't you make him a character in the book?
I did. Yeah. I put him in. He probably didn't read it, but you did. You probably told him about it. So what do you think of that, Jack? You feel obligated to tell people if you put them in a book?
No.
I'll tell you a story about Jack. In one of
Jack,
his books,
finish. Go ahead,
one of his
Jack.
books is a Karen Spencer, and I have a friend named Karen Spencer.
Okay.
There you go. Let me put this cat off my lap. So I agree with Roland. I don't put people's names so much in the book, or well, I don't expect them to read it. So I just stay away from it. You know, I don't tell them if I do use it. Some people thought Joey Pigza was a name. Some people thought Miss Volker was a name. Miss Volker is not her real name. It's Miss Walker is the real name. And Bunny Huffer in Dead End of Norville. Everyone thinks, oh, there must be a Bunny Huffer. I'm like, no, no,
No.
no. So I just try and stay away from that kind of controversy. But I do like your trick there, Roland. That must you must keep a really dedicated list in your dark journal.
I keep a list on everything, and it's
Yeah.
not dark. It's like on my wall. If people want to see my
Yeah.
list, you just come into my
Like
office.
right there. Did not read the book. I'll get him. Did not read the book. I'll get him.
Yeah. This is from this one's from Mike Shoulders, who we all know, and it's for you, Jack. It says, "I've heard that authors often recognize the story rather than just think of a story. Joey Pigs, this sounds like a great example. Is that true?"
No, that's thank you for the question. It's a good question. To recognize the story. And I think, quite honestly, that I think that most writers have to be very perceptive in seeing a story when it begins to hatch in front of them. Even if it's just a piece of the story, you can work your way into it and then create the rest of the story. But there's something about an event that will take place that will just be an inspirational moment. And then you go, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I agree. You have to be on the lookout.
Well, and Jerry, you're always on the lookout, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
When I was in Africa, I saw a secretary bird. And in my head, I thought, I learned that he kicked snakes, and I thought, I'm going to write a book, Rattlesnake versus Secretary Bird. Yeah,
That's a good
I'm always,
idea.
you know.
That's a good idea. I'm the same way. I'm always looking for stories. I actually get my best ideas from my stories when I'm trying to finish a book.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, they just kind of come to me and I think, oh man, I really want to write that. But of course I can't because I'm trying to finish the book that I'm working on. So apparently that's kind of a creative time for me to get ideas when I'm working on something totally different.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Sometimes the unconscious starts bubbling up,
Yeah.
as you said, as a
I was in school.
but also as a gift. It's a gift. It's saying, Roland, don't worry. You can finish this book.
Mhm.
Other ideas, don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. What, Jerry? Go ahead.
Well, you go to school and then they say, come on, come have lunch with the teachers. Come on in the teacher's lounge.
Oh yeah.
And you see kids peeking in. They want to know what the heck is going on in the teacher's lounge, right?
Yeah.
So that happened a lot where kids kept trying to get in, see what the teachers are doing. Why is Jerry in there? What's going on? And I wrote a book called What I Saw in the Teacher's Lounge. So
Yeah.
it totally,
That's such a good subject.
inspired from kids peeking in the door, looking like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Every school. If
Mhm.
you're in the lunchroom, kids are going, what are they talking about? Usually the teachers are talking about the students and private things and ignoring the author because they don't know what to say to him or her. I guess we're just about done. Tomorrow we read from our books. Is that correct? Is that what we're doing?
That is correct. In fact, it's been an incredible week where like the three of you will be able to like kind of reflect about the week and decide, what was it, Jerry? You were like, do we still like each other?
Yeah, do we still like each other, Roland?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm going to do as soon as we're off? I'm going to eat your cake.
That's 3,000 miles from me. That's not fair.
I know.
Oh, Ronan.
Sorry.
She
They
could
were
have
telling
finished
us that
that
the cake
cake.
looked absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful cake. Kind of
Yeah.
had a Stonehenge of chocolate.
It did. Well, I hope that Marie hasn't eaten all that off the top.
No, that's the part I wanted.
Yeah. Anyway, great talk, great fun. Sad that tomorrow's the last day, but it'll be the last day. So join us tomorrow and we'll read from our books and talk
Might
about.
not be the last day. Maybe we'll get an inspiration.
Yeah,
Keep
maybe we'll
going.
do it again.
We
Someone told
appreciate
me, someone told me, I love you guys. You should have your own radio show.
It's true.
Oh yeah, let's do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Click and clack and click.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you guys again for always showing up, and so many people that are joining in from around the world to come in and connect and collaborate. What an opportunity it is to be able to connect with you and to learn from you all, and for us to be able to sit back here and just laugh and enjoy the stories that you guys have shared. And today I think was really powerful, the story behind the story. And I look forward to tomorrow. I know everybody, if you have students out right now, this is a perfect opportunity to get them connected to the author life. That is what an opportunity. So them offering up their time, just invite your classrooms, invite teachers to invite their classrooms, have them join in, you know, take those links that we're sending out, put them in your Google Classroom and invite your students to join in and be part of the conversation. So it's a great chance to get connected to them and to each other.
You know, I have to say, from this perspective, I feel like a little fly on the wall. You know, you hear that expression where you get to like be a part of a conversation. Honestly, it's been incredible. It's been like we've been invited around a table, and obviously it's a virtual table, you know, for what's happening right now with the three of you to be able to have weave in and out with these conversations. It's been an absolute gift. And so just like what Jamie said, for teachers, for students that are home, and for parents, to join us live for tomorrow, but also to watch the other, our other sessions, because it's been absolutely incredible.
I agree. What a great opportunity.
Thanks again for setting this up for us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you,
Jack.
Roland.
Thank you, Jerry, Jack. Happy birthday, Jerry.
Scotland. Thank you, Canada. Thank you, Dubai.
Dubai.
Yeah, you guys tomorrow.
We'll see you same
Bye-bye.
time, same place tomorrow.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.